Hello and welcome, not just to Gardening Australia, but to spring. Prime time for so many of us in the garden. We've prepared an inspiring mix of great ideas, practical projects, and a little spring surprise. Here's what's coming up.
I'm visiting a bushland oasis. It's only a stone's throw from the CBD, and it was once a quarry and a landfill tip. And I'm going to meet the people who've helped to transform it.
I'm going to show you the best growing techniques to successfully transform your flowers into delicious fruit.
Vertical gardens can transform a small space or wall in your garden. And the good news is they are easy to make yourself at home, and I'll show you how.
And if you have kids, grandkids, or little friends, you won't want to miss what we have in store.
I'm at the Brisbane Botanic Gardens, Mount Cootha, just 20 minutes drive west of the CBD. This botanical institution is famous for its tropical dome and its Japanese garden. It first opened its gates to the public in 1976, and today I'm looking at its latest attraction, its newly renovated bonsai collection. Bonsai is the Japanese art of growing and training miniature trees, often to particular forms to exaggerate their age or character. This is achieved through the use of specialised containers and mixes, root pruning, crown pruning, and using special metal wires to shape and bend the plant. So is this the original collection?
This is the original collection from Len Webber, a really renowned bonsai expert from Australia that has been expanded over the years to include more of our subtropical species. It is the largest public collection of bonsai in Australia.
So you've got a lovely collection of subtropical native plants growing as bonsai. That must be of cultural significance.
It's extremely unique here in subtropical Brisbane that we have a collection that really suits the climate here. So when people come and see these plants, they understand that these are trees that they can grow in their own backyards as bonsai.
Perry Newman is a team leader at the Gardens, and part of his role is the management of the bonsai house. You've got a rock star here. It's the swamp cypress of 1976. What's special about it?
It's a beautiful tree, and it's an excellent example of shari. So that tree's got the side taken out. It's been hand-carved and bleached, and that gives it the impression that it's perhaps been hit by lightning or had some serious damage done to it. Really adds to the age of the tree and really adds to the power of that tree.
It's a fascinating collection.
It is, isn't it?
Now this, Weeping Melaleuca, is another of the stars of the collection, and you created it, didn't you?
That's right, yeah. So myself and the volunteers created this tree over the last 3 or 4 years. It's a young but excellent example of a raft-style bonsai. So what that means is that the tree has got a single trunk that's been laid down on its side. We've put some incisions in the base of the trunk, and we've grown new roots from there. And then all along the trunk where epicormic growth has come up, we've taken these little shoots and we've wired them and turned them into individual trees all the way along. So the effect will eventually be for a full canopy with a small forest of trees. One of our volunteers at the garden has made us this beautiful pot, which is like a free form style that really adds a bit of a natural element to this tree as opposed to your typical formal style bonsai pot.
I love the fact that this is using an Australian native plant. It's not just maples and azaleas. There are so many of our Australian native plants, like figs or melaleucas, that people can trial at home.
And it's still got wires.
That's correct. We allow the wires to actually be on there to teach people that this is how you create a bonsai. It's not just about the finished result. As a botanic garden, education is core to what we actually are, and we want people to learn this is how you create the finished product.
There are no signs of irrigation. How do the plants get watered?
Well, I'm actually watering all the trees every day by hand.
Perry says the key to rejuvenating the collection has been changing the potting mix to a custom blend they've created specifically tailored for Brisbane's conditions.
So we've got some pumice stone here to maintain a little bit of moisture, free draining, and it stops the compaction of the soil. We've got a premium potting mix here that I sieve all the fines out of, so it's actually quite coarse. And the zeolite here has the ability to maintain some nutrients, so the plant can access things such as magnesium, potassium, calcium, whenever it needs them. The zeolite has these sharp edges, and that actually cuts the roots and divides them as they grow. Yeah, it's great.
So it's root training?
It is root training, yeah. So this tree's just come out of the pot, and I'm just going to loosen up a bit of the soil underneath here.
The repotting is done in full view of the public to help them understand the process.
One of the things we do with the repotting actually is to remove bigger roots. We leave the stuff on top, but under the ground there, you'll see anything that's fat like your finger, we actually take that off. So they'll actually shoot lots and lots of these fine little roots, but now further back into the tree. We're repotting the figs once a year generally. The Ficus virens we've repotted every 6 months. It's an extremely vigorous growing tree. Some of the others, the black pines, etc., we would repot those only every couple of years.
Perry has plenty of volunteers who help at the bonsai house, many of whom are hobbyists at home.
Yeah, I think for a lot of our volunteers, there's a difficulty in maintaining large trees at home. So this is a place where they can come in and work on some really big trees. We can do that as a group. You know, some of these trees require 3 or 4 people just to pick them up and move them around. So the repotting's done here as a group, leaving them to do their little trees at home. We're all bonsai crazy around here, so it's great for us to have access to different trees to work on at all times.
If these Knoll beauties have got you thinking about starting your own collection, Perry has 3 simple pieces of advice he passes on to beginners.
Be prepared to make mistakes, because you won't really realise you've made some mistakes for a couple of years. The second one is that the trees are real trees, you know. They need to be exposed to the elements. They want to have full sunshine, they want to have water, wind, rain. Be patient, you know. Do a little bit, come back to your tree later, have a look at it, and always just keep in mind that nothing has to happen straight away.
Dale says the bonsai house is an example of the value of botanic gardens to the community.
I'm wanting people to understand just how easy it is to grow bonsai. There's a certain style and a certain skill behind it, but it's something that you can learn. Botanic gardens are places of learning. We're here to show people what you can create in your own backyard. You might have a big backyard, you might have a small balcony, but bonsai is something that everyone should trial.
What should I be harvesting and eating right now? We plant a range of crops which mature over winter. Things like leeks, spring onions, kale and carrots, which means we have plenty to eat in early spring.
What do I do if I find a swarm of bees in my garden? Firstly, don't panic. Bees are normally at their most passive when they're swarming unless you antagonise them. Bees will typically swarm when the colony is dividing. If you notice this, then contact your local beekeeper or beekeeping association, which you should find on the internet or through your local council. And they'll come and rehome that swarm, which is a good outcome for the bees and the beekeeper.
How many salvias are there? Well, there are stacks, over 1,000 species and more being described all the time. They are one of the most distinct genus in the Lamiaceae family, which is a great group of plants, natives and exotics, for bringing insects and birds into the garden. But recently, there is a new salvia on the block, and it's this plant behind me. It's known as Salvia rosmarinus, which used to be known as Rosmarinus officinalis, or as most of us know it, rosemary. It is an interesting botanical reassignment. It's moved into the Salvia genus, but I reckon I'll be calling it rosemary forevermore.
If you've got fruit trees, chances are they're covered in spring blossom right now. And while they're lovely to look at, Sophie's got some great advice to make sure that those flowers are followed by masses of fruit.
When we bought the property 11 years ago, this was just a grassy paddock. So the first plants that went in were the fruit trees. The orchard is divided into 4 quadrants, housing over 100 varieties of fruits. Right now, the apricots are budding and the plums are in bloom, heralding the start of spring and the anticipation of delicious summer crops. While not every flowering tree develops edible fruit, every fruit started life as a flower. All of these flowers on this plum have the potential to form fruit. Flowers are the start of the next generation. First buds, then flowers, then fruit, and finally seed. With access to nutrients and water in the soil, the plant draws up all the sugars and minerals it needs to mature the buds to flowers. Inside each flower are the ovary, stigma, and pollen, a combination of genetics for reproduction from the parent tree. Flower development is a crucial time to create a visual and fragrant display that no pollinator can resist, because to form fruit, the flower needs to be fertilised. Bees and other insects harvest pollen and nectar when visiting flowers. In the process, they deposit excess pollen from flower to flower. If the pollen reaches the flower's stigma, it fertilises the ovary and the process begins. If the plant is in good health and successful in its display, the pollinators have visited and all the right parts meet, what once started as a flower will form full healthy fruit and seeds, ready for a new plant to emerge. Some fruit trees, like pears, plums and these apples, require 2 different varieties, whereas other fruit trees, like my pistachios, need a male and a female, otherwise the development of fruit simply won't happen. Some fruit trees are self-fertile, which is great if you've only got space for one tree. Like these peaches and nectarines, they can fruit in as little as 2 to 3 years, and the fruit will ripen any time from December through till April, depending on the variety. Another good example is the apricot. It's self-fertile and fruits in 3 to 4 years, from December to February. Most fruit trees produce en masse all at the same time, so select a variety that works with your summer holidays, as nothing is worse than coming home and all your bumper crop has dropped. Not only does that lead to a waste of summer recipes, but it can also lead to a possible fruit fly infestation. It's important that fruit trees are well fed, watered and protected to give them the best chance of succeeding through all stages of development, especially when flowering. Plants consume food from the ground up. At my place, my flock of chooks and geese deliver the nutrients into the soil via droppings. But for those who don't have a flock, adding well-composted manures and organic matter are the most natural way to improve your soil and keep your plants healthy and happy. Potassium is really important for flower and fruit development, so apply it using organic-based fertiliser pellets or anything that was designed for blooms. The best time to apply it for stone fruit like this peach is in late winter, before and during flower set. Water is the highway that all these nutrients travel on, so keep them hydrated deeply and frequently. I use low-angle wobblers to deliver my bore water. You can attract bees to your trees by planting colourful, scented or bee-enticing flowers near your fruit trees, and they'll be visiting your patch all season. The juicy flesh and seed taste sensations of your favourite fruit and veg all started out as a flower. Flowers aren't just a feast for the eyes, they're an integral part of the food web, and when we feed them, they'll return the favour in spades. Ask your local nursery to find the right fruit tree for your place.
Some of our favourite public green spaces are the result of revegetation efforts, and they're a great spot to sit and take in some biodiversity. But they don't just happen. there's a lot of effort goes on behind the scenes by dedicated staff and volunteers. Millie's visiting one of the best in Melbourne's west.
Just 13 kilometres from Melbourne in the western suburbs is Newport Lakes Reserve, a recycled 33-hectare park which has had many lives and was once a former quarry and rubbish tip.
Last I heard, there was been about 162 different species seen down here.
Oh, wow, that's
bird watchers.
heaps. One person who is familiar with the place is Senior Conservation Ranger Andrew Webster, who's been working here for over 20 years.
So basically a block of 33 hectares. And down through the middle, there's almost a dividing line, if you like, that divides half into this conservation environment area where we are now, which is my main passion. And you've got the other half of the park, which is your recreational side of things. So it's been designed to basically encourage almost anyone with any interest of any type virtually to come down here with open spaces. Within the actual conservation area here itself, you've got these main lakes in the middle here. We'll call them two lakes. They're segregated by this bluestone rock platform we've got over here, which is the rock that was actually quarried out of the lakes when it was actually quarried at the time.
So this is like the original quarry wall?
Yeah, the original rock face.
The Victorian volcanic plains used to occupy all of the land between Newport and South Australia. It was formed in volcanic eruptions 4.5 million years ago, and as the lava covered the area and cooled, it formed a dense rock called basalt, or bluestone. While the park has many elements, it's also home to a specialised nursery that's played an important role in the restoration of the bushland. For over 20 years, the nursery has supplied all of the Indigenous plants to the local council for the conservation areas. It's now headed up by microbiologist, horticulturist and one-time volunteer at the nursery, Nikunj Pandya.
We're collecting our own seeds from reserves and grasslands area. So western basil plants, which is very dangerous because of the lots of new development coming up on the field. So we try to reserve them and selling them to the customer and the council as well, government bodies. We grow almost all Victorian plants here.
Nick, there's so much yellow at this time of the year, but this is enormous.
Yeah.
Such a big flower. Tell me about it.
It's a podolepis. They're beautiful for a home garden plants. After the yellow flower, they have a cotton balls. So looking really nice as a cotton balls on them. That's actually the seeds for them.
Yep.
We can collect when it looks like a cotton balls.
And is this an easy one to grow from seed?
Yes, it is easy to grow. If you water them too much, they will go. Really good for dry garden.
Beautiful. Tell me about this, Nick. It's special.
Yeah, it's a blue grass lily, very rare plant from western basil area. You can see they just opening up as they're getting a good sun.
Yeah.
And you can see the nice seed head also coming up.
So you'll collect that seed before you sell them?
That's
Hopefully.
true, yes. And because it's a rare plant, at this stage we're not selling them.
Yep.
We want to increase the population of this kind of a rare plant. And then once we have a good number, we start to sell them. As you see, this one is water lily. It's also an indigenous plant to this western basil area. Deep water plant, so you can put them up to the 1 meter deep.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And then you get these amazing flower spikes, even from that depth.
That's true, yes. They start to come up on the water surface, and then you have nice, beautiful yellow flowers on them.
And I reckon these are one of the easiest things to get a whole new suite of plants. You put a water bowl in, suddenly you can grow all of these species as well.
That's true, yes. You can put in a single bowl all different species, and they all come together without any fighting, and they look perfectly nice. Nice yellow flowers on them, yeah.
How many different species are you growing here?
Oh, there are so many different species with the trees, shrubs, grasses, and wildflower and ground cover. So there are different varieties of each section, but we have almost 250 plant species here.
You started yourself as a volunteer in this nursery?
Yes, in 2006, I think I started as a volunteer. I love to work with the plants. So slowly, they gave me a job. And yeah, it's going through from 2006 to 2022.
And now it's your nursery?
Yeah, now I'm the boss.
The extensive restoration of the area began in the 1980s, thanks to the campaigning of some community members who preferred a parkland to a tip in their neighbourhood.
One of my favourite spots, Millie, down here. Got the water, we've got the wildlife, the birds in here. We've got some of our really special species, this chaffy saucesedge here, or Garnia phyllum, the big tall plant. That's really quite special around here in Newport and Altona and Hobson's Bay, because we've actually got a butterfly called the Altona skipper butterfly. And the larvae or the caterpillar form, that's the sole plant it lives off. So without that plant, we don't have any Altona skipper butterflies.
Andrew, I noticed there's quite a few dead trees amongst the planting. A dead tree can also offer habitat, yeah?
Yeah, well, one of the great initiatives in the early days was actually put dead trees into the lake itself. What we did was we got trees from the neighbouring suburb on big trucks, brought them in, came in with excavators, and when there was no water in the lakes, literally planted big dead trees, and they're still out there now today.
The current Friends of Newport Lakes have been working in the park for 25 years, alongside the local council with monthly community plantings and working bees.
I used to play here when it was called a quarry. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
You grew up here?
Yeah, I grew up here, and then I came back, shifted back here, and I nearly fell over when I saw. Yeah, I was just gobsmacked, and I knew I had to be involved. It was fabulous.
Gay, how long have you been part of the Friends?
Yeah, well, quite a few years now, about 7 years. To be honest, I didn't know this place was here before then. And I've lived in this area, well, since about the 70s.
It does feel like the nursery and the lakes and the volunteers, that everyone is influencing the community that little bit, or giving them access to information.
Yes. So we're out there sprouting about our little area, and we call it a little suburban gem, really. Now, and you'd think it was just natural, but if you think back, you know, this was a quarry.
It must be so satisfying to see plants you've grown back in the ground, and then, of course, producing seed that you can collect and grow again.
Sometimes I feel you're giving your babies in the high school, you know? So it's just like they are babies for me, and now they are go back to their own land, you know? And in the future, as you said, we come back and collect the seeds from these babies and grow more and more.
Looking for something to do this weekend? Something a bit hands-on that you can really get your teeth stuck into? Maybe something to do to celebrate Father's Day? Well, look no further. Tammy is heading on up.
I love a good trip to the nursery. I feel like a kid in a candy store. But what if you've only got a small space or a wall to work with? A vertical garden is a great option for maximising that space. Of course, vertical gardens can be massive, with complex watering systems that come with an eye-watering cost. But if you keep things simple, you can make your own. Firstly, it's really important to choose a sturdy frame. Wire mesh is a great option, but there's also the good old-fashioned timber lattice. Whatever option you go with, make sure it's strong. Another frame option is a timber pallet. The shelves make fabulous planting pockets. It can be hard to know if the timber has been treated though, so it's wise to avoid pallets for vertical gardens that include edible foods. Today, I'm going with 2 pieces of timber lattice that I'm going to bind together. This is going to be helpful because once the plants are on there, and especially after they've been watered, it can get quite heavy. Next, choose your pots. Many pre-made vertical systems have tiny pots, which is fine for small plants, but they can limit your options and stunt the growth of some plants. I think it's best to try a variety of pot shapes and sizes. That way, you can use some you may already have at home. Basic plastic troughs and leftover plastic pots are all great lighter weight options. But they all need to be reasonably small because you want the plants to be the focus, not big pots. Another great lightweight option is a wire basket lined with coconut fibre. Look for one that's got a flat back and that'll make it easier to hang. Now it's time to start getting creative and choose your plants. Now this is the fun part. The best vertical gardens are lush with a creative and cohesive combination of colours, textures and forms. There can be so much to choose from and it can get a bit overwhelming. So today I'm going to keep things quite simple. It's great to decide on a theme, and that's when it's really important to think about where you're putting your vertical garden. Will it be a sunny herb garden or have a shaded tropical feel? Think about the amount of light, warmth and wind exposure your vertical garden will get. It's a great idea to choose between 3 to 5 core plants with different textures. Something trailing, a little bushy, and a strappy one too. Some excellent plants for a shady spot are Mondo, Bromeliad, Ferns, Dianella, and for a trailing plant, try Dichondra. For bold or bushy leaves, try Philodendrons or Coleus. And for a sunny spot, Society Garlic with its pretty lilac flowers is very popular. Carex is also another good hardy choice. Great trailing options are Creeping Fig or ornamental black sweet potato. And for bold foliage in a sunny location, try Santolina or Lamb's Ear. There are just so many possibilities. So to help you choose, we've put up a detailed list on our website. I've got a sunny spot in mind, and I've decided to go with a simple, edible vertical garden. So for my strappy plant, I've got spring onions. My trading plant, I've got creeping rosemary. And for my bushy plant, I'm going with parsley. And for some edible pops of colour, I've got violas. Now, let's set it out. First, I'm going to use some garden wire to secure the frames together. Be sure you attach your frame securely so it doesn't topple over. I like to think of my frame as a grid, so don't be afraid to play with pot placement before hanging them up. Sit plants in pots to help you decide where they're best placed. Get strategic. Try creating straight or diagonal lines of the same plants or grouping them to highlight and contrast colour and texture. If pots are stacked on top of each other, this will restrict light and airflow. For best results, stagger them. I'm quite happy with that. Now it's time to get my hands dirty. When it comes to potting up, always use a premium potting mix that's suitable for your plant type. So if you're potting up cacti and succulents, use a cacti and succulent potting mix. In this case, I'm using a blend that's rich in organic matter and it's well draining too. So it's perfect for herbs and veggies. Now I'm going to put my parsley in, one at each end so they don't crowd each other out. So since it's sitting just a little bit too proud, I am going to remove some of the root ball. And don't worry, plants are quite resilient, so it's not going to mind a bit of a shave. Now to backfill around the plants, to make sure the roots are well covered. You don't want them drying out. And now to put it all together. Small pots in a sunny or exposed location mean they will need regular watering. Different plants will have different growth rates, so you can trim the quick growers to stop them from hindering the slow ones. It's coming along nicely. Don't expect your vertical garden to look lush and full immediately. These gaps will fill up over time as the plants grow. And you can always tweak it too. That's the beauty of a vertical garden.
Still to come on Gardening Australia, Clarence shows you how to get on top of your garden weeds. We meet an indoor plant obsessive with unique techniques for growing her amazing collection. And Hannah gets the dirt on playing in the dirt. At this time of the year, the garden grows really quickly. And while that may be great for lots of plants, it's not so good when it comes to weeds. But now is also a great time to get a grip on weeds and make sure they don't really establish at your place. Clarence is here to show us how it's done.
We spend a lot of garden time managing weeds. And I sometimes wonder if they're the price that we have to pay for the pleasure we get from all the other aspects of gardening that we love. The yin and yang, so to speak. Today, I'll show you some of my top tips for managing these proliferating outsiders in our gardens. The definition of a weed is that it's a colonising plant which has settled in a place that is not native and can overwhelm its new home if not carefully managed. Each state has their list of priorities too. And in the Illawarra on the east coast of New South Wales, one of those is turkey rhubarb. It will choke out native species, it will kill animal habitat, and it can literally drive plants and animals to extinction. To chase back the turkey rhubarb and find out where it's coming from, we're going to have to remove some of these rocks. So here's the turkey rhubarb. You can see where it's going into the ground. The problem with pulling weeds is if you pull it, it'll just snap. Now, even though I've taken the vine out of the ground, there is still the rhizome and the roots to contend with. And this will continue to pump out new plants if I don't get it out of the ground. This is the big problem with turkey rhubarb. There's the rhizome. There's an entirely new plant coming out, even though I've pulled the vine off, but the roots continue down and right down into the ground we go. Still chasing, still looking to see just where this starts. And it is right back into the ground, and there we go. That is quite something. Now, as you can see, it's pretty long. This rhizome is already starting to punch out a new plant, and this root system goes for, well, almost half a metre already, and this is tiny. Now, this is part of the problem. In the bush, if you think you've got them all out and you miss a couple of rhizomes, they'll continue to cause you problems. Same thing in the garden. If you don't chase them down, find those rhizomes, get them out, they will still be there. There we go. Put that out the way. Now, right next door to the turkey rhubarb in this bed is another really annoying weed, and it's onion weed. Now, you just crush it up, it does smell like onion, the form, the habit, all the same, and I really don't like it at all. One thing with the onion weed, if you pull this, you are in for trouble. So you really need to dig down and dig as deep as you can, get right down, because it has a bulb, and if we hopefully get enough of this out, you make sure you get all of the soil, and as it comes down, the bulb, or the main bulb at least, has satellite bulbs, and each of those tiny bulbs / seeds will produce a whole new plant. And hopefully I've dug enough of the soil out to get them all. So if you haven't got it out, you're in for trouble. It will just continue to proliferate. Get it out, get rid of it. I hate it. Now, one thing about weeds is they are very good at what they do. And in this case, I've got nutgrass, and it's found its way into one of my pots. Now, to give you a really good look at this, I take that out of the pot. You can see here is the nutgrass, and as you chase back the root, you'll come to a nut, new plant, nut, new plant, tendril, nut, new plant, and that can literally go for metres below ground. Not a lot of herbicides will take it out. They're a pain in the nuts. I'll add that to my collection. It's reckoned over 28,000 plants have been introduced to Australia, with around 3,000 of them considered weeds. Now, some of them are weeds in their own country, like dandelions and thistles. And as all garden lovers know, even our native plants can be environmental weeds in other areas, such as the Cootamundra wattle, Acacia baileyana, aka the Coota bloody mongrel wattle. If you'd like to know more about weeds, there is a helpful list called Weeds of National Significance. You'll find a link on our website. Even their names sound a bit villainous. Weeds such as bridal creeper, cat's claw vine, Chilean needlegrass, apple of Sodom, and prickly pear, to name a few. We can all do something to keep weeds from smothering our gardens or spreading into the bush. One basic step is to stop weed seeding by cutting off the flowers. If you're really having trouble with pernicious weeds, you could try covering the area with black plastic or a tarp. This will not only block out the light, but heat up the soil, killing off most of the weeds with deep rhizomes and taproots. Once you've got your weeds out of the garden, you might be tempted to compost. Try not to do that. We really want to kill the seeds and the weeds. One way to do that is to take your weeds and put them into a clear plastic bag, because after all, it's going to be the sun that does all the work in this instance. We can get all of our weeds, the rhizomes from the turkey rhubarb, all of the nuts, all of the bulbs from our onion weed, get them in. I'll just tie that up. Let the sun do the work. A couple of weeks, they'll be dead, and you can then use them in your compost. And finally, my top tip is this: nothing beats persistence. So keep chasing out those root systems, keep mulching to suppress weeds, and plant densely the plants you really want to see in your garden to block out room for the plants you don't want. It will not only help your own garden, but also your local bushland environment.
One of the great things about gardening is experimenting, figuring out what works best for your space and climate. Your garden's a bit like your own living laboratory. Our next story's about a gardener who's getting knockout results with her indoor plants by trying a new technique or two.
Plants are my saviors. Plants take me away from the busyness of my life. They take me away from the noise of the world, and I can just focus on one thing. My mind is very busy. I'm constantly making lists in my head, but when I'm taking care of my plants, all that noise is gone. I'm Nora. I'm a mother of 3, and I love indoor plants. How many plants have I got? Oh my goodness. People ask me that all the time, and you know what I say? I don't know. I don't know how many plants I have because I've never counted them, because what is the point of counting? Am I gonna say when I get to 400, I'm gonna stop? No. I just don't know. I don't wanna know. This is my 5th bedroom, which I also like to call my grow room. I have most of my plants living in here, and it's a lovely controlled space where I've got all my beautiful babies living their gorgeous lives. I just love it. I've got most of my plants in this one room because it's easy for me to keep them safe. I've got a busy household. I've got 3 children. My youngest is 6 years old. She loves to play around, and I want to give her that space in the home where she feels she can do what she likes to do without running into Mummy's plants. So I keep all my plants in here, but it's also easy for me to control the conditions for the plants. I can provide the lighting that they need, and I can also provide the humidity that they need in a very well-controlled space. I love to bring my background into how I grow my plants. I've got a science background. I did a medical degree, and I've gone on and done a PhD in epidemiology and public health. So I love researching, and I love how that actually can be applied in the plant space. So when I'm growing my plants, I love to try different things, because plants need different things, different kinds of light, different kinds of medium, different kinds of fertilizers, and I like to apply that to see what happens when I do certain things to a plant and how I can make that plant grow better. I grow my plants a little bit differently from other gardeners, and I'm very uncompromising about that. No soil. I grow my plants in clay balls. These round brown balls are called LECA balls, and LECA is actually an acronym, and it stands for Lightweight Expanded Clay Aggregate. So they get a bunch of clay, put it in a very, very hot environment, and they pop like popcorn, and they're very porous, and they easily suck up liquid. So, of course, growing without soil, some people might think, well, how are the plants growing without nutrition? You've got this pot here that doesn't have a hole, actually holds the nutrient solution. And when I say nutrient solution, that's a mixture of water and your fertilizer. So this plant always has water and fertilizer and is always feeding and can look so beautiful because it's always got food. Hydroponics is generally a very scary term for a number of people because when you think about hydroponics, you think about pumps, you think about pH and all sorts of equipment that people use when growing their plants. But what's really different about semi-hydroponics is it's like hydroponics light. It's like the easy version. You know, you get the best of both worlds. You've got your plant living in that nutrient solution, thriving so well, but nothing is moving. There are no pumps, so it's all the fun of hydroponics, but less work. I love growing my plants in clear pots, and the clear pots allow me to have easy access to the roots. I can see what's happening with those roots, and I add that ventilation. I put all these holes easily with my soldering iron, and the reason I do that is because I want my roots to breathe, and my beautiful Oxalis triangularis just loves it living there. One of the very important things about having indoor plants is providing the light that they need, because remember, plants grow outside and they've got the lovely sun. So when you've got your plants indoors, having a simple thing like a grow light is really important. But a grow light doesn't have to be anything expensive. I've got my grow bulbs living in just a normal indoor house lamp, and I just put that in there and I shine it on my plants, and my plants are able to grow because they've got that full spectrum of light that they need, that they would be getting from the sun. This is my Calathea orbifolia. This is one I'm really, really proud of. This plant has just taken off so beautifully. The leaves usually don't get this big, and most people's leaves are very crispy edges, but this beauty is just going from strength to strength, and those leaves are just pristine. I share a lot of my information online. I've got a YouTube channel called the LECA Queen, and I share a lot of my semi-hydro journey there. Hello, plant people. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for joining me. It is not easy. I had to learn everything from scratch, from how to operate a camera, how to work sound, and just basically how to film, how to edit. The learning curve is steep and sometimes can be very, very painful. I remember one time I recorded a whole session where I was extending the moss pole of my monstera, and it's really, really big plant. It's something I can't redo, and when I sat down to edit, there was absolutely no sound. It crushed me. But, you know, these are growing pains, and I think I'm a bit better than that now. With semi-hydroponics, you really cannot get away from science, because plants are beings and they have cells and all the systems that beings need to actually get nutrition. So important things for plants: photosynthesis, respiration. These are all things that are really important that we don't really talk about during indoor gardening because it's a bit sciencey, and that's where I think I come in with my science background. I'm always trying to explain why I do what I do, and always have like a scientific basis for that. And I'm not just doing it just because that's what other people have done. And I'll fill that up a third of the way so that those roots are not submerged in the nutrient solution. I'm watering my plant along the side, and I'm not actually watering the balls themselves because that nutrient solution at the bottom is going to get sucked up right to the top through capillary action. So the clay balls that are at the top are still going to be moist. I've got my plants, and I think those will always be my first love. And then I've got the YouTube channel. I love both aspects of it. I'm learning so many things that don't have anything to do with plants, which is awesome. But plants, they're the OG.
Us gardeners know how good it feels to be out there in the thick of it, digging in the dirt, shifting piles of leaves around, and generally getting grubby. And when it comes to the health of our kids, science is uncovering that a little bit of dirt can do wonders. Here's Hannah with the scoop.
I've popped over to the Royal Botanic Gardens in Melbourne to find out more about why it's a good thing that adults, and especially kids, get out and enjoy nature as much as possible. And what better person to tell me all about the science behind it than allergy and immunology expert Professor Mimi Tang.
There's actually many different ways being outdoors can help children and adults. Firstly, of course, it's the interaction with dirt, trees, plants, air. But more than that, there's actually a lot of research now around exposure to green space being very important to support your mental health. So I think that both of those things are important. I've always been interested in natural approaches as well alongside my medical work. I've always liked the idea of mental health and healthy eating, healthy living, being in nature. And through all of that interest, I discovered early on that the microbiome that we carry with us have an important role. And so I wanted to understand more.
Do you focus a lot on the gut microbiome? Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so the gut microbiome really describes all of the microbes that live in our intestines. And they play a really important role in establishing the health of your immune system, as well as mental health, brain development, and metabolic health.
And some of your work has really looked at food allergies in particular. Can you tell us what's the connection between that and the microbiome?
The immune system is developing from the time the baby's in the womb and then through the first 3 years, roughly, of life. And this period is considered a time when the immune system really is like a little baby growing. And by the time you get to around 3 years of age, you've pretty much established your lifetime risk for allergy problems, autoimmune problems, inflammatory diseases. And it turns out that the microbiome, or the bugs in our gut, play a very central role in training the immune system when to respond and when not to respond. But in people who get food allergy, this goes wrong. And the immune system inadvertently or incorrectly recognises the food antigen as harmful, and it generates an immune response against the food and causes the production of allergy antibodies. And these antibodies are really responsible for the symptoms of a food allergy when someone who's allergic to food eats that food.
And some people might have a few different experiences of what a food allergy can be. How would you describe it to somebody?
What happens when they eat the food is quite frightening. They can get hives on their skin, swelling of the lips, eyes and face, and this happens very quickly. And that can be terrifying because, you know, your face puffs up like this and parents get very scared, so does the child. Worse than that, they can actually have difficulty breathing and their circulation can be affected, so they might collapse. And these two latter things, the breathing and the circulation symptoms, can be life-threatening. So, you know, these food allergies are serious. The person who suffers from food allergy has this, in many cases, for their entire life, and it affects the way they live. Right now, there are no treatments for food allergy. So as an allergist, all I can say to my patients is, well, I'm afraid you have to avoid your allergen. And that is not easy. It sounds easy, but it's really not. And it affects not just the child with allergy, but their whole family. You know, it has huge lifestyle implications.
So what can people who are looking after young babies and children do to build a good gut microbiome and to build up that resilience?
What we know is microbial exposures in early life are critical for a healthy microbiome. So we're really talking about exposure to the environment, to dirt and plants, green space, and a healthy diet. These three things are very important. When we talk about a healthy diet, we're talking about a diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables because they contain fibres, carbohydrates that are accessible to the good bugs that live in us, and they allow the good bugs to thrive. Now, in terms of microbial exposures, we also know, for example, that growing up with siblings improves the health of your immune system towards being able to maintain tolerance well. And going to daycare, having a pet, particularly dogs, when you're a young baby. So there's lots of ways we can improve environmental exposures that support a healthy microbiome. So getting out into the garden when you're younger, a young child, will have a really important effect on both your gut microbiome and your immune system, leading to better health throughout your lifetime, really.
So there you have it, straight from the professor's mouth. Being outside is good for kids, and it's even better if they can get into gardening. Because like I always say, dirty hands equals happy hearts.
I have to agree. Nothing makes my heart happier than being in the garden. And I have someone who's on the same channel. May I introduce Molly?
Hi.
Molly, we've been working on something together, haven't we?
We have. We've been making a new show for junior gardeners and their families called Gardening Australia Junior. And it starts next Friday on ABC Kids channel.
That's right. Hannah, Clarence, Tammy and I have teamed up with ABC Kids to make a gardening show for junior gardeners. We hope that kids will watch together with their families and get everyone out into the garden. 20 episodes so far.
Yep, 20 great episodes.
We've had so much fun making it, haven't we?
My favourite bit was the creepy crawly adventure with Clarence. Sneak adventure mode, triple activated.
What was one of the favourite things that you made during the shows?
Definitely the pizzas in the Pizza Herb Garden. It was very interesting to learn about all the herbs that we put on top of the pizza, and it was very delicious to eat as well. So yummy.
Have you got any advice for any budding young gardeners who are watching the show?
Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty and just go out into the garden and just have fun.
Want to give it a try?
Yeah.
If you've got kids, grandkids, or borrow your neighbour's kids, this is a show to watch together and get inspired. The first show airs next Friday at 7:05 on ABC Kids. You can then turn over and watch our show. Alternatively, catch it on iView. All the details are on our website. Now, when we get to the end of Gardening Australia Senior, you know what happens, don't you?
Yep, jobs for the weekend.
Let's do it. In cool temperate areas, welcome some wattle into your life with the red flowering cultivar Acacia Scarlet Blaze. This early bloomer is frost tolerant and is a standout specimen in full sun to dappled shade. Remove dead raspberry canes, scratch back the bark and cut down the dead brown ones. Those that reveal green when scratched will produce this summer's fruit. Keep collecting sticks, leaves, straw, dead foliage and paper to add to your compost. These brown materials help to balance the compost and they feed the microorganisms that break down your veggie scraps. In warm temperate areas, Cineraria can be planted out now. These bloomers love full sun but will be happy in part shade on a balcony. Keep them well watered for dazzling displays in spring and summer. Prune back lavender while it's still sleepy to encourage bushier growth and flourishing flowers through spring. Avoid cutting into the woody stems and focus on shaping the green tips. Remove the competition around fruiting trees by digging a barrier ring around the root zone. Use a spade to create a 10-centimetre deep trench so the weeds can't make the jump to eat up vital nutrients. In subtropical areas, it's time to divide and conquer your ginger. Split rhizomes into chunks and position 5 centimetres deep in fertile, well-draining soil. Protect from wind and harsh sun and water weekly. Prepare your gardens for the heat by digging in an oya. Terracotta pots buried underground will seep water out slowly, avoid water evaporating and help plants adjust to the heat. Head to the GA website to see how to make your own. Sow catmint seeds around roses now to ward off aphids in mid-spring. This tropical mint will attract beneficial pollinators and the aphids will avoid the sweet, lemon, aromatic foliage. In tropical areas, cover fruit trees susceptible to fruit fly. Ensure that holes are no bigger than 1.6 millimetres to keep the fruit flies out and keep our wildlife safe. Plant out Queensland blue pumpkin seedlings into mounds rich with compost, plenty of water and space to sprawl. Add mulch and a little bit of shade to stop them drying out. Having trouble with traditional coriander in the tropics? Why not try perennial coriander? Hailing from Mexico, this humid-loving herb grows well in heat and shade and will keep the spice in your life. In arid areas, get your grevilleas in shape with a light trim between flushes of flowers. Pinching out buds may seem like tough love, but it will encourage the plant to branch out and produce more flowers. It's always a great time to plant a tree, but planting now as temperatures rise will give tube stock trees the best chance to establish. These fast-growing, low-cost plants are fantastic value. Time to sow some quick growers to provide fast returns before the onset of hot weather. Radish and rocket not only grow fast, they're also great companion plants and will ward off flea beetle. That should keep your green thumbs busy this week. And while you're at it, get your thumbs up going on our social media pages, where there's plenty of ideas to get you out in the garden. Molly, thanks for your help today. These pots are looking fantastic. Well, that's it for us from here, but we've got a fantastic show for you next week, and we'll see you then.
Bye.
For some gardeners, taking to a native shrub or tree with a pair of secateurs and a pruning saw is a task that's cloaked in confusion. It's packaged in a puzzle. It's wrapped in an enigma. Well, I'll be speaking to an expert who will take the mystery out of pruning native plants.
I'm meeting an inspiring family of nurserymen that goes back 4 generations who are passionate about growing intriguing and unusual plants.
And we meet someone who's spent over 30 years mastering the harmonious Japanese art of ikebana.